All right. How's everybody doing? Welcome, everybody. Hope you're having a great Monday night. Welcome to another episode of Sasquatch Out of the Shadows Live. I'm your host, as always, Alex Pedikov. Like I said, hope everyone's having a nice Monday night so far. For those of you new to the channel, please check out some of our other videos. We have up to 27 streams now, like this, basically like this kind of show, and we just sit down and talk with guests and have a great time, interact with the audience, take some audience questions. So it's a lot of fun. We've got a lot of cool shows. Last week we had a great show with Tate Hieronymus of the Bluff Creek Project and the Bluff Creek Project podcast. That was really interesting, talking about the Patterson-Gimlin film, all that kind of stuff. Next week we're going to have on Leon Thompson of the Okanagan Bigfoot channel. He's a researcher out in British Columbia. So kind of cool. Tonight we're talking about Washington State. Next week we'll be talking about British Columbia, so just above them, neighbors to the north, so that should be interesting. I've got a video coming out this Thursday, top 6 cryptid-related museums / Bigfoot museums I've been to. Just a couple of cool little places, and I'm going to start doing some more videos about my research area and some of the other animals and things that I've come across in there, so expect some more weekly videos coming forward. But let's get on to the main show here. So tonight we are talking to Shane Corson of Washington State. So Shane is a Bigfoot field researcher with the Olympic Project. They're pretty well known in these circles. They're a notable Sasquatch research project in the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State. He's also a co-host of Monster X Radio and an avid outdoorsman. As I was just talking to him about hunting, and he loves being out in the woods, so I'm sure we'll be able to relate on that. So without further ado, let's bring Shane right on in. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, awesome to finally have you on. I know we were supposed to be on a little bit earlier in the month, or I think back in September, but obviously, as we were just talking about off air, wildfires kind of put a damper on that. And I hope everyone on your corner of the world is safe and nothing was lost of value.
Yeah. We I wasn't ever really directly in danger, but in the back of your mind, you got that, the smoke's really close, and you got a lot of fire surrounding you. I got family in California, got family in Oregon, and a lot of those individuals were directly affected. I didn't know if I was going to have to jump in my truck and go help out, as I've done in the past.
Yeah, it's something I think those of us out in the East, we don't really deal with wildfires. Our biggest concern around here is snowstorms. So it's a totally different type of thing you guys got to deal with. And, God bless you for, being able to help each other out and kind of get through that, because, man, that's just not easy having to deal with that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, well, awesome. As I read in your intro, obviously you're an outdoorsman. Tell us a little bit of background on yourself, kind of where you're from and where you grew up and what got you into this subject, really. That's kind of what I always like to ask guests.
Yeah, so I grew up in Scotland, actually. I moved over to the States in 93, but I lived on an island called Islay off the west coast of Scotland. And even then, I was interested in cryptids in general. Obviously, Nessie, which was on the mainland of Scotland, Loch Ness. And so I got interested through my mother. She got me interested in Loch Ness.
Got Scottish Wild Man actually in the comments, so that's kind of funny.
yeah, the gray man, as they call it, were there. Very familiar with that. But I was very interested in the Yeti and Sasquatch. But, being in Scotland, I had to live vicariously through TV and books and everything I could learn about Sasquatch there. I did. And I learned about, Peter Byrne and his research, and Tom Slick and Grover Krantz and all these guys that did so many amazing things. And I was very interested in paleontology. Growing up, I was hugely interested in dinosaurs and fossils.
Oh, same here. That's awesome.
Yeah, I used to write letters back when letters were kind of cool to paleontologists in Glasgow or Edinburgh in Scotland. Wow. And I'd get responses back. And so that really got me interested in cryptids and past animals that used to live of all shapes and sizes. And I had a chance to, my parents eventually moved to the U.S., the San Diego area in 93. And I was still heavily invested and interested in cryptids and Sasquatch. Yeah. It wasn't until about 97 that I actually started getting out and doing some research myself, what I considered at that time to be research. I did a lot of stuff in San Bernardino, Alpine area, Cuyamaca, a lot of time up in Yosemite. I spent a lot of time in the Sierras. And so never really found anything of interest. I talked to a lot of neat witnesses, and I used to do a lot of backpacking and remote backpacking and hiking and camping. Never really found anything of interest, but talked to a lot of neat witnesses while I was in California.
Wow, that's awesome. So, I mean, you've been out there in the woods, you know, kind of some of the natural beauty, and that's something an interesting perspective I think you have is, you know, obviously you're from kind of Europe in that area, similar to myself, and I think a lot of people over there don't really understand the amount of wilderness that's truly out here in America. I mean, especially in the West, we have a good amount out here, out east, but it's nothing compared to out west, where just quantity alone, you guys have just so much. You spend a lot of time backpacking, and is there any area in particular that you particularly have fallen in love with in terms of the natural beauty and kind of the serenity and that sort of thing? I know that's a tough one, but
It really is. I mean, state by state, I've now lived in California, Oregon, and now I'm here in Washington, where I'm going to probably reside the rest of my life. But California, Yosemite, that whole area was just magnificent to me. I kept going back, and it'd be like a 12, 13-hour drive for me from San Diego, but I used to do it all the time. I loved it.
totally worth it.
Oregon, Mount Hood Wilderness, it's just amazing. The Mount Hood area is probably right up there at the top. And of course, the Olympics up here in Washington, the amount of beauty up here. I mean, I'm very blessed in a lot of ways because I've got to see so much beauty. And I've done a lot of traveling around the States. But those three areas in particular, Yosemite, Mount Hood Wilderness, and the Olympics, and I spent a lot of time in the Olympics. There's so many hidden gems out there, you know, Sasquatch aside.
Yeah,
just getting out there and hiking and camping and just getting out there where nobody's at and exploring. It's an amazing thing.
It really is. Yeah, they say there's nothing like the PNW. I have yet to really dip my foot into Oregon and Washington. I'm hoping soon when all this stuff kind of calms down. Been up to the Redwoods, and that place blows my mind, and Willow Creek and that whole area. But man, you're definitely really lucky to be up in that area. So I think a lot of people that maybe are listening from overseas or for other parts of the country may not know exactly what the Olympics are about. Do you want to talk a little bit about the geography, that it's actually a rainforest and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, the Olympics, it's an actual rainforest, and you have different microclimates. You go to the Ho area, and it's really rainforesty. And you go to the Queets up in the Olympics, it's very rainforesty. And you get to some other areas that are very dry, but you're surrounded by water. You're surrounded by the coast. You know, you got the Puget Sound to the east, and you got the ocean shores to the west. You're surrounded by lots of bodies of water, ocean-wise. And then you go inland, mountains, like you wouldn't believe. Yeah. Mountains everywhere, deep valleys, lots and lots and lots of lakes and rivers that are all these rivers that run into the ocean. I mean, they all get huge salmon runs. You know, it's an amazing thing to watch. You know, it reminds me of Alaska or something. You see these huge salmon runs coming up in steelhead, and but you got a lot of elk and deer. You got a lot of bear and a lot of cougar in these areas. Really, really pristine, in a pristine environment, and vast wilderness. You know, it's a very difficult area to research in unless you kind of have a focus or a key point. And fortunately, we have a hub or some property up in the Olympics, an amazing area where there's been a lot of roadside crossings where we conduct a lot of our research. And so, yeah, it's just an amazing area. And it's always damp and wet for the most part. You get in the summer months, it gets a little dry, but you never get real heat up there. I mean, 80, 85 would be a hot day.
Right. I mean, some of those mountains up there, obviously Mount Rainier and some of the really higher peaks, there's snow up there year round, correct?
Yeah. I mean, when I spent a lot of time in Mount Hood and Mount Hood Wilderness, Mount Hood usually year round has snow. Every other year or so it'll lose it. But yeah, Mount Rainier, Mount Adams, Mount St. Helens, Mount Baker, all those mountains usually keep snow year round at the peaks. And so it's also a fun time to be. You know, we're really up here in the Pacific Northwest. We don't really have extreme weather. We do get years that we get a lot of snow, but relatively speaking, you know, it's pretty moderate. It's a great place to you know, year round hike and be in. You know, as long as you get past the rain, and I love the rain. I grew up in Scotland. It's the same climate. It's you know, it's just enjoyable and great tracking too with the wetness and stuff. So it's just a great area to research.
Oh, I can imagine. I'm very envious. I got to get out there and spend some time with you guys and really get a feel for the PNW. So on that note, let's talk about the Olympic project. You want to first mention what it is and then maybe how you got involved with it?
Yeah, I mean, so the Olympic project is basically, it's a group of individuals that are all very like-minded. But with a huge different amount of backgrounds. We have outdoorsmen, hunters. We have biologists involved, scientists from all walks of life. And we're all kind of like-minded. The majority of the Olympic Project either had an encounter or pretty much knows that Sasquatch exists.
Cool.
We do have skeptics in our group that have never had an encounter, and I think that keeps it fresh and on point and keeps us in check.
Good.
But the majority of us are already past the point of, do these things exist? We've either had an encounter or the evidence has led us down that road. And so really, we're about collecting data. The OP, the Olympic Project, is really not about proving the existence of Sasquatch per se. We're more about collecting data so that in that day that maybe Sasquatch is proven, we'll have a plethora of data readily available, both with sightings and field reports. You name it, it's documented. And even audio, it's all documented times a year. So we're trying to get patterns of predictability. It's a huge thing within the Olympic Project. And we have a lot of really good members, both male and female, like I said, from all walks of life. Most of them in Pacific Northwest, but we do have some more we do have a few in the East Coast, in Central United States that are members that come out this way quite frequently to get out and get in the woods, and really we're just, like I said, a like-minded group of individuals that love what we do, love the outdoors, and very passionate about the Sasquatch subject.
That's fantastic. You got, as I mentioned earlier, I believe you guys are one of the kind of well-known research groups, and I think that reputation kind of speaks for itself because of the way you conduct yourselves, the way that your members, kind of behave, and with the data, you guys don't just release every little tiny thing that's out there. And there's a lot of interesting stuff, and I've certainly got some questions about that. But yeah, it's great, and it's refreshing to see that. When I think of, in my head, some of the top groups, the Olympic Project is definitely up there as one of those groups. And just from having seen you guys on, whether it's certain members on TV programs, I know, and on the Trail of Bigfoot, obviously Seth, my good friend, spent some time with you guys out there, which was really cool to see, and just kind of talk a little bit about the project from that perspective. But one thing I do got to ask, because a lot of people ask about it, and I'm sure you had this question coming, but let's talk about the nests. Can you say a little bit about that? Because that is, I think, one of the things you guys are known for.
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to mention this. There's a lot of great groups out there and a lot of great individuals out there, and I think it's all about the foundation. Derek Randalls was a co-founder of the Olympic Project, and he built a great foundation and a great group of individuals to work with. We're drama-free, and it's just a great group to work with across the board. And so, yeah, it's such an enjoyment working with him and the rest of the group. Everybody's got their little niche, their little specialty. So if somebody's going to build an organization or get out in the woods, build a great foundation. It's important. I really believe that, and surround yourself with a good group of people. Now, when it comes to the nest, back in 2016, a timber surveyor, a guy was out marking timber to be cut down up here on the east side of the Olympics, came across these ground nests, and he, in his 25 plus years of doing this stuff, he gets out solo. He's been around all sorts of animals, bears, marking timber. He had never in his 25 plus years seen anything like these nests. They were truly amazing to him. And he got a little bit spooked out. He came across some large ground nests. He didn't know what they were. So he got a hold of Derek Randalls. And the reason he got a hold of Derek Randalls is because Derek Randalls by trade is a landscaper. And 10 years prior to this nest site find, Derek had done some landscaping work for this timber surveyor. And he got a hold of Derek and said, hey, I know you're into Bigfoot. I'm just curious. Have you ever seen anything like this? You want to come out and check it out? And so along with Derek Randalls, James Millian of the Olympic Project went out, and a couple of DNR, Department of Natural Resources guys, came out. And all these guys accumulated over 200 years of woods experience, being in the woods. None of them had ever seen anything like these ground nests.
Wow.
And so that led to where we're at now. We've been studying them since about 2016, looking for new nests and studying them. We've had Dr. Jeff Meldrum out to these nests. We've had anthropologists, biologists. We've had zoologists out to this area just to view the nests, to get their opinion. And we've taken samples from them. And, a lot of them said, hey, they're very reminiscent of primate nests. They're not just like a bear scrape or haphazardly put together. Dr. Jeff Meldrum and the rest of us went out a couple years back, and actually deconstructed a nest and took core samples out of the nest And Dr. Meldrum noticed that a lot of the huckleberry, and these nests are completely made out of huckleberry, and they range in size from about 3 feet across to about 9 feet across. Most the smaller ones are more circular. The larger ones are more oval, and they're all found on fingers or plateaus coming off a ridge line, and they're above a seasonal salmon creek, surrounded by huckleberry, and all the nests are made out of huckleberry, woven together. And Dr. Meldrum noticed that some of the huckleberry had been pushed into the ground, and then the nest formulated around. So it wasn't just like there's something put thought into this. All the huckleberry in this area had been snapped off, all the tips, all the boughs, 1/4 inch to 2 inches in diameter. And as the larger it gets, the harder it is to break. It definitely took something with a thumb to break these off. No teeth marks, no scratch marks, and the nests were constructed together. Another interesting thing about the nest, we did find 2 rocks at what we call the point nest. And you got to understand, to date we found about 23 nests, excuse me, but they're spread out along this ridge line coming down. They're all placed on these plateaus or fingers coming off this ridge line. And at one of the point nests, we found 2 rocks that had score marks on them, like something had definitely struck those together at one point in time. The only rocks above ground, softball size, had score marks. And for the listeners, a lot of people associate Sasquatch with throwing rocks or smacking rocks together or communicating, all that stuff. So it was one more thing to add to that puzzle of interest. And just recently, back in February, right before COVID hit, a buddy of mine, Todd Hale, fantastic researcher with the Olympic Project, and I were out in a new area looking for nests. And we actually caught something without visually seeing it, building a nest. We got a brand new nest find. Unfortunately, scared the thing off. It very large, sounded bipedal.
Wow.
We spent a lot of time in this area recently. Got a lot of amazing vocals recorded. Got samples, hair, everything from this new nest area. And it's an area now that we're focusing in on. But unfortunately, a lot of our samples, it was just horrible timing. A great find, horrible timing because of what had transpired this year. To send samples out. It was just one of those things where you're like, yes, after 4+ years, we find a new nest. And not just that, we kind of discovered, walked right in on what was making
active spot, right?
Yeah, a little tense at that time because originally we thought this thing was approaching us, and my first instinct, it's a bear. It was very large. And then it retreated and circled around us. But we brought Cliff Berkman out. He's a good friend of ours. And he helped us cast a couple of hand impressions, multiple foot impressions, and we collected a lot of the debris. So it's an exciting recent find, and we're going to get back out there and do some more searching and see what else we can come across. But the nests are they're just an amazing, one of the coolest things I've ever, bar none, been involved with.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And as I mentioned, the nest, one of the things when I think of the Olympic Project comes to mind are the nests. There's obviously a lot of buzz and a lot of talk about that. Now, have you been in touch with any other people or groups that have claimed to have found similar things, whether in the Pacific Northwest or elsewhere?
That a little bit here and there. You get people that reach out to you, and what a lot of people send me are structures. And I don't. Most of the structures I come across are man-made, and I tell people these aren't structures; these are actually physical ground nests. If you just think of Big Bird building a nest, that they're massive. And so, but historically speaking, this is kind of cool. Historically speaking, there have been other nests found, both in California, in Oregon, in Washington, in Alaska, I believe in Prince of Wales Island. And they're all very similar. And the vast majority of them are made out of huckleberry. Some are made out of bark. But one of the, if you look at the book, what's it called? Raincoat Sasquatch, written by Robert Alley.
Right. Fantastic book.
He writes about in that book about a nest found, I believe it was in Alaska, and it's very similar. And it's got the same characteristics as to how it was found. It was found by a timber cruiser. Where it was found, on a point. So that was interesting. And a lot of people don't know this. Daniel Perez, who writes a Bigfoot newsletter, interviewed a guy by the name of Lyle Lafferty. And Lyle Lafferty was he worked for the timber company back in 1967 around Willow Creek. And he actually came across the same year, 1967. I don't remember the month. I think it was close to when the Patterson-Gimlin film was filmed. Same
Very
spot.
good.
He came across a nest above Scorpion Creek, which feeds into Willow Creek. So you got Patty, who looked to be either a pregnant female Sasquatch or, post or pre, I don't know if she gave birth now, but, you could definitely tell it was a female Sasquatch. And there was a nest found not too far away, like literally not that far away. So it makes your wheels spin. Could these nests be a birthing scenario or something of that nature if they're associated with Sasquatch? Maybe, maybe not. But I'll tell you, looking at these nests, the more I look at them, it's that sort of scenario. I don't think personally Sasquatch goes around making nests all the time. I think a specific reason for a specific time of year. Maybe it's every couple of years. Maybe it's every 4 years. If they give birth like orangutans, it's every 6 to 8 years. One other little tidbit: not all these nests were on the ground. There were 2 smaller nests, maybe a foot across, a little bit larger, a couple feet off the ground, built into the bush, but they were exactly like the ground nests. And Derek Randalls had discovered that through his research that mama gorillas and baby gorillas build practice nests in bushes. It's kind of a teaching process. And 2 of these nests in 2 different areas were in bushes off the ground, but built and constructed just like the ground nests. So once again, it gets your wheels turning and it goes, things that make you go,
Yeah, that's absolutely. And it's just so interesting to hear that. And something that always kind of catches me off guard, or not really catches me off guard, but that consistently surprises me with this subject is the amount of traits that are described with Sasquatch across the country in North America, that then certain behaviors turn out to be like a great ape behavior, a behavior that's found in gorillas, whether it's, I guess, the wood knocks with the chimps or the scent glands with the gorillas and maybe the smell, the nests. I mean, that is amazing. Some of the primatologists and, those sorts of people, anthropologists that you had in there, what have their initial impressions been? I know you said it's been similar, but, what were some of the takeaways that they had given?
Yeah, so with some of the biologists we brought out there and shared information with, they all admit it's not bear behavior because, that's your go-to. Right off the bat, you're going to think bear, black bear up here in the Pacific Northwest. We don't have grizzlies. So you're thinking bear.
Yeah.
It's not bear behavior. That's been rolled out. I've had people joke around that it's been wood rats, and growing up in California, in Oregon, and whatnot, I've seen hundreds of wood rat nests, not even remotely close. Now, having anthropologists out there and zoologists and people that work directly with primates that build nests, both 2 of the individuals we brought out from a certain zoo out here in North America work directly with bonobos, with chimpanzees, and with gorillas.
Amazing.
And they, these 2 individuals, male and female, both said, "Hey, wow, these are amazing. These are very reminiscent of what we see the primates we work with build." And one of the really cool things was one of the female zoologists that came out said, "Hey, I can see characteristics. Like this would be, if I was working with this chimp at the zoo, this would be the kind of nest she would build. This nest over here would be this so-and-so." So she could see characteristics in the ground nest, differences. And I thought that was amazing. I never had considered that.
Almost like individualistic sort of traits they might put in. Like you paint a certain style, your friend may paint differently than you. That's really cool.
Because all these primates have different techniques and ways of building nests, and they do it a little bit different. Some are more, like she used to joke around, like the females were very adamant about building a nice, comfy nest, and the guys would just, us guys slap it together. And so I thought that was funny. But having Dr. Jeff Meldrum come out and getting his expertise on some stuff, having a lot of other anthropologists come out, looking at the nesting out, it's very primate-like. And then we've had hair samples visually looked at. Dr. Meldrum took some back to his lab and had his students look at them and himself. And, there are obviously a lot of known animal hairs in this area. I mean, you're in the woods. You can't walk very far without finding, if you really look for it, you'll find hair. But what was consistent in a lot of these nests was primate-like hair, a non-human primate-like hair, coarse, non-dyed hair. Cindy Dosen of Homini Enigma, who's also a Linnet Project member out of British Columbia, she visually inspected some of these hairs and came back with the same results. This is definitely primate hair, and it matches other possible unknown, maybe Bigfoot hair from around the country that she's visually analyzed. So the vast majority, everybody we've brought out there, and it's not been many, all come back with, their jaw hitting the floor, amazed. Back a couple years ago, I brought Laura Krantz, whose relative is the late great Grover Krantz out there.
She had the podcast series, right?
Yeah, and she really had to work a number on me. We really don't bring anybody outside of academia, or someone's not interested in Sasquatch out there. And she came out, and no video was taken, but they did audio. And she was just, I remember her and her producer were just like, there's a famous saying now, she jokes around, it's, I won't say it, but it's beep, Shane, this is crazy, sort of thing. She told me at the time, this is everything I wanted it to be and thought it could be, but she's been brought out other places and hugely disappointed. And she's like, well, this actually lived up to what you said it was. And I said, well, trust me, I know.
Yeah, that is incredible. And you mentioned earlier the whole thing about structures. Obviously, that's a big debate. There's plenty of people out here in the East who claim they find structures. I found things that are weird, but I mean, you just cannot ever really rule out that they might be human. And of course, we have harsh winters, so a lot of stuff gets thrown over by wind and snow loads. So that happens. But there's, I think, nothing like the kind of nests. I think that's sort of within the whole structure debate. That's probably some of the best evidence out there of something, an unusual structure that, I mean, as you said, you bring academics out there and everyone is impressed. And I can only imagine, what it looks like in person.
Yeah. I mean, to touch upon structures, honestly, I don't poo-poo structures. There's a lot of weird ones out there. The vast majority of structures that people find and that I've come across are usually near a trail, near that, 9 times out of 10, they're definitely human. But there have been some weird ones. I haven't personally come across them, and I do an ungodly amount of hiking. All my partners do, all my associates do, and they're almost always a human. I just recently was out in quite a bit off trail and found a structure, but it was a lean-to, and it was definitely human made. There was a blanket there. I mean, definitely human made. The ones that really intrigue me are the ones that are found really far out there, where they just don't make sense. So way, way off a trail in an area where it doesn't make any sense. Those intrigue me. But I can't say Sasquatch makes nests. I can't say Sasquatch makes structure. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something I think with a lot of claims out there, it's interesting to see the locations, especially if it's, like you mentioned, way out there. I mean, for the most part, I can't think of really any outside of any sort of nest kind of things. The only thing I can possibly think of is a guy here in New Hampshire in the 1970s claimed to have seen, and I interviewed him a few years ago. He's an older guy now. He saw this Sasquatch-like creature sitting inside of a structure that he described as being stacked stones with hemlock branches at the top. And he went back eventually, and there was no trace of it, and he really had to bushwhack into it. But that's the only story I can hear of any sort of structure involved. Everything out here is that sort of, the tree breaks and twists. And, obviously we know that bears can climb into saplings and pull them down, and moose and that sort of stuff.
Porcupines, elk, deer, they get their antlers caught in it. I've seen it happen. But, once again, there's some interesting ones, but a lot that I associate with known animals. But I definitely think Sasquatch is more than capable of doing some of that.
Yeah. And as you said, I mean, some of the rarity of those kind of things, that's what makes it interesting. It's not like you guys are stumbling into the woods and finding structures every single place you go. It's sort of, I'm assuming it's in, like you said, on a sort of a ridge. Now let's look at, so we have a bunch of questions coming in. I'm going to take just the nest questions. I will go to some of the earlier ones after that, but Tactical Bigfoot Research, that's Mike from New York. How you doing, man? He says, where's the best place to see the nests? Obviously, without being specific or anything.
Yeah, I don't know. Does he mean pictures of the nest or where to find them? I'll answer.
Yeah, like where do you typically find them? As you mentioned, like is it on that ridge or?
Yeah, so typically, and this goes back historically speaking, they're found along off of ridge lines they're found on the cusp of a finger or a plateau. Out here, I call them fingers. People are like, "What's a finger?" Well, basically, you got a ridge line, and if you were to grab, this is the ridge line, the fingers would be coming down like that, and the nest would be at the tip. And usually they're around there's a steep decline, like a fallout down to a valley or to a ravine. Like with the nest we're working with right now in 2 different areas, because we found this new one in a different area. It's the same MO. They're found on these fingers or the end of a plateau with a steep decline down to a salmon creek, a seasonal salmon creek, which I think plays a huge role.
That's smart.
And we've been finding, this new nest was found back in February. And we 4 years ago, we thought these nests that were discovered by this timber cruiser were built around the month of February. And now we've kind of proven that, having walked in on something making one. And so they're found like that, but they're found in very, very thick foliage. The huckleberry in this area is anywhere from 6 to 9 feet tall. You can't see a couple feet in front of you. You can disappear really quick. You can hear anything coming a mile away. I mean, you can't sneak into this area. You know, I often say if I was hiding from the law or something on the lam, this is where I'd want to be, because I can get out of there really quick and I can hear people coming. And the overhead too. We had people go, why don't you fly a drone in there? Well, early on, back in 2017, Cliff Berkman brought a drone out, but it wasn't going to happen. The trees are too close together. They're large Douglas firs and some hemlock and other pines, but it's just too tightly knit. But the overhead is completely covered. I mean, you can't view these nests from up above. It's a really thick overhead, and which makes this area so great because it protects you from the rain and it protects you from anybody flying overhead if they were to do so. And you got really thick foliage. And this area, on these ridges are off these fingers on the very end of them. I mean, it's like something, all of the huckleberry leaves, everything's cleared out and there's one little area, but everything around it's left alone. So it's completely concealed like a wall. Very smart, something very intelligent, you know. And so that's the sort of area, and even historically speaking, a lot of these areas, they're kind of found, and they're always found by timber cruisers, somebody in the timber company. And why is that? Because these guys have a job to do. Right. This isn't a place you're going to hunt. It's not going to a place you're going to hike to. It's not going to a place you're going to do any of that. You have a job to do as a timber cruiser or somebody out there, timber surveyor. These are areas
marking, and they're really getting.
You have to be there. This is your job. It's not an enjoyable hike. It's brutal. Sometimes you're falling over stuff and you're going under stuff and over stuff, and it's wet and it's snags. So they have a job to do. And so, historically speaking, the vast majority of people that have come across nests are somebody involved in the timber company that have a job to do. And so if you're going to look for them or try to find a spot where you got to get way off trail and go somewhere where people don't go and look for those things. Maybe it's different in other places. I don't know. What we're dealing with, I kind of got an idea where to look.
Definitely. And then it goes to this question from the Bluff Creek Project podcast, says, are the nests off game trails or off of the beaten path? You sort of answered that, but any game trails in the area?
Yeah, there are, but way off the beaten path. You don't hit a game trail, but until you get closer to the nest, it's way off path. You have to bushwhack the whole way. There's no trail, you know, you're bushwhacking, you know, with stuff over your head. You know, and there are bears in this area. So you got to tread slowly, be careful. You don't want to jump something. There's a lot of cougar and bear in this area, a lot of, you know, ungulates and stuff. But it's definitely an area where you get down in there, and there's no game trails per se in the nest, but on the lower, below the ridge or below the fingers towards the salmon creeks, these seasonal salmon creeks, yes, there's game trails down there. For sure. So it's not like you're going to follow a game trail and walk into one of these. Not going to happen. Yeah.
Now that is just real. I'm just trying to visualize that in my head, just how incredible of an area that must be. And the Scottish wildman asks, are the nests all found at the same altitude? I know you mentioned they're up on the ridge. Is there a fluctuation, or is it all sort of in a, I guess, tactically smart place?
Yeah. Well, first off, the nests are all kind of and there's multiple nests over these fingers. The largest concentration, there's about 7 of them. And they're kind of in a V formation, very military-like, you know, kind of like something elk would do, very V-shaped. But yes, I'm not gonna give up the actual altitude.
Yeah, okay.
But I'll tell you what, totally, it's evenly spread. It's all the same. And another thing that's of interest, James Millingham Limp Project back in 2016 noticed this, that when we were searching these other fingers coming off this ridgeline, there was maybe 6, there was all nests on them. As soon as that finger was further away from the creek or the river, there would be no nests. And it's like you couldn't hear the river and there'd be no nest. As soon as you got kind of in that proximity where you hear the river, there'd be a nest. So there may be something to that. We don't know yet. Right. This new nest we found, it's similar in everything, but it's a little bit further away from the creek. So, but they're evenly spread, the same height, altitude, all that. Definitely.
Wow. Yeah, that's just incredible. Now, this is something I was actually going to kind of ask you about, but Carrick of Crash Course Cryptozoology has the question on that one. The stories of the nest, especially the one in which the animal actually fled, reminds me very much of the Marble Mountain footage. Has Shane seen this footage? I wanted to ask your opinion on that footage and what you guys think about that. I know it's kind of it's been questionable in the past, but it's definitely, I mean, it's still interesting to see.
It's interesting. If I remember right, that's the one where there was a group of churchgoers or something, and there was that thing walking on the ridge.
Yeah, kids, and there was like this little structure thing, something walking, and they claimed it was Bigfoot.
Yeah, I don't know. It seemed interesting then. It seems interesting now, but I don't know. But I don't know. It's either is or it isn't. Either they were pulling a prank or they walked in on something. It's just with the structure so easily found that I don't think Sasquatch makes mistakes like that. That structure was in my opinion, probably human. Maybe they saw Sasquatch and they came across the structure and that was human made. I don't know, but it was too easily found. I mean, if Sasquatch was to get in there, it'd be kind of trapped. It just doesn't make sense. It seems like that's not something they would do, but I could completely be wrong. Now, did they film Sasquatch? Who knows? Maybe. Now, get back to what Todd Hale and I had walked in on. This thing, when we walked in on this new nest, it was just a quick trip in and out. We were going to be researching that ravine the following day, but I wanted to show him this ravine that we were going to be looking at. It was a new ravine, Jason ravine, a couple thousand feet away from the original nest site area, a ravine that we really hadn't looked much into. And so I was going to take him out there before it got dark, and we were going to go back to our camp and set up our tents and stuff. We literally just got really lucky and walked in on this thing building a nest that we could hear it. It was moving. It sounded heavy, big, bipedal, and we got spooked out, and it circled up around behind us. And that's not typical bear behavior. And so I was like, wow, this is pretty crazy. It's going to get dark. We got quite a hike out. Let's get back to our camp setup. We'll come back at her tomorrow and bring, Derek Randall's and a few others out with us. And we did. And I told him that night, I said, we're going to come across a nest. I know it. And we did. It was in the making, brand new, all fresh huckleberry on the ground with lots of big snaps and breaks. And so, I guess similar. But the thing with the Marble Mountain footage that's completely different with what we're dealing with is all the ridges up where we're dealing with are completely covered with trees. You wouldn't see something walk like that along a ridge line. They're completely covered with trees, and you may see something walk by, but you'll never get that backdrop with the sky.
Yeah, that seemed like much more of a kind of an alpine type area where there was a lot less tree cover. I don't know where in California that was, somewhere. Maybe the Sierras. I don't really know.
Probably the Sierras, yeah.
Right. So the Bluff Creek Project podcast says, if I'm not mistaken, he took us, the Bluff Creek Project, to see nests these guys found. So Bluff Creek Project, another one of those great sort of research groups, and I'm sure you guys have worked with them in the past.
Yeah, I'm not really sure if I understand the question.
He was just commenting that.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
You've brought. I mean, you as you mentioned, you've brought primarily people who are either researchers or interested in this subject or academics out to these nests. You don't just take everybody out there.
Right. But I do have a lot of respect for the Bluff Creek Project, what they're doing down there in the original film site. I know you had Tate on the show, I think last week. Yeah, fantastic guy, and just a great group of individuals doing a lot of really neat camera work down there. They discovered a marten, not discovered, but
pine marten. That was awesome.
Yeah. That sort of stuff just amazes me, and I think that's one of the joys of being in Sasquatch research is you never know what you're going to come across, and if you're doing your due diligence, and which those guys are, a fantastic group, and a lot of respect for them.
Yeah, I was just talking that with actually Carrick, who asked the Marble Mountain question today, as I think I've come across a moose rut in my area, as I was telling you earlier. And that's one of the byproducts, as with the pine marten, and I'm sure you seeing, the mountain lions and all the other critters out there, you just see so many other awesome animals, and you see how conducive an environment is for supporting large creatures like moose or elk or mountain lion. It just it's a byproduct that I think is just an awesome part of being out in the woods and just kind of doing the research.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just right off the bat, that's just an amazing thing to do. And I think one of the other important things to do is if you're into research or investigating or any of that stuff, even if you're just an enthusiast, pick an area and study that area. Stay in that area. Don't hospital chase. There's a report over here. There's a report over there. Those things are fun to do. But if you're really in it You know, like what the Bluff Creek Project's doing. They're staying in one main area. I kudos to them. I got another Limp Project member, Chris Spencer, who's got an area down in southern Washington. He's been investigating for 5 years, and he's got to know all the animals in this area. He's given some of the coyotes and elk over those years that keep coming back in game cameras and audio recording. He gives them names. He knows them. He can see them visually through audio and through the game cameras. And you get to know the environment. You get to know what's coming through there. You get to know what they're eating, you know, all that stuff. And that's super important, is studying an area over a length of time. Otherwise, you're just kind of throwing darts in the dark. You know, well, maybe they're here. What's the moon phase? You got to learn all that stuff and learn the area. I think that's super important. Definitely. Encourage people to do that if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, if you just go out in the woods and every noise you hear is automatically Bigfoot or whatever, it's you kind of got to spend time out there and learn, as you mentioned, what the other animals can make some really weird noises. I've found just even kind of what you mentioned, pick a spot and sticking in this spot I've been in almost a little over a year now, just amazed at the sounds that barred owls can make, and all these other animals can make such weird noises that you just wouldn't expect otherwise. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I often say, you know, when you walk into a room and you stub your toe in the middle of the night, 2 a.m, you'll make sounds you didn't know you were capable of making, you know, sounds you're like, wow, I can't believe that came out of me. Well, animals are the same way. We think we know every animal sound, and every coyote and every wolf and every moose and deer and elk and cougar and all, but we really don't. They're capable of making sounds based on what's going on in their environment and what happens to them physically and all that. And that's why it's key to record. And David Ellis of the Limp Project, and Chris Spencer and a few others, we don't just listen to audio. We visually look at audio through like a spectrograph on like sonic visualizer. So you're visually looking at that and comparing that to like other animals, say through like the Macaulay Library of Sounds, which is like the largest database. Right. And so you're visually comparing it and ruling it in or out. So if you can, listen to it and look at it, it paints a bigger picture, because like I said, animals make a lot of sounds that, you'll be amazed at what animals can do. Known animals.
Yeah. I mean, I think of even just some of I think it's out from Colorado or one of those states, sort of in the Intermountain West, of mountain lions making these weird squeaking noises that I think had never been documented until it was picked up on a trail camera. That kind of stuff is really neat. I do got to ask about David Ellis. Is this was one of his castings, correct, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, Littlefoot from the Mount Rainier area, found in the month of October in a pretty remote little area.
Got this from Lauren Coleman of the Cryptozoology Museum.
Oh, right on.
So it's just really cool, because I had tried to do a little bit of research and I hadn't found a whole lot on this particular footprint, but it's just so interesting, just because it's a little baby footprint, basically.
Yeah, I mean, basically, there might be some more information on that on the Limp Project website, olympproject.com. I believe David talks a little bit about it, but that was found by David Ellis in an area of interest near Mount Rainier in the month of October. And it was not, there was just that one small foot found, but as far as there was no track line of a Littlefoot. What was interesting was you had that Littlefoot there, but next to it was much larger impressions.
Right.
And David's impression was that it was almost like, a mother holding her child, letting the child down for a second and picking the child back up and walking away. There was a large track line in that one Littlefoot there. And it was an area where it was really cold in October, and not where people would be walking barefoot per se. And if you look at the dimensions of that, we've had one of my buddies' wives brought out a little cast of her kid's foot, and very narrow at the heel, about the same age, very narrow at the heel, and definitely different. You look at that, the heel is very thick.
Yeah.
Then right there in the center of that is where it stepped on a stick. That's why there's a little gouge there right behind the heel.
I see that. Right.
Yeah, that was a stick. It stepped on a stick. So yeah, it's just a really interesting little.
Yeah, as you can see, it's very small, guys. I mean, this is compared to an iPhone. So just put it right up. It kind of fits right within the phone. So yeah, it's a cool one. I love it. It's one of my favorite in my collection. I always have it out on display at events, and people are always like, what is that? I'm like, it's baby Bigfoot.
Yeah, I mean, if you want any more info, I won't speak for Dave. Get a hold of David Ellis, and he'll fill you in. Yeah, he'll definitely fill you in.
Definitely. So I think this is kind of funny, but I think there's a drinking game going on in the live chat with Illuminathan saying, my friends and I would play a drinking game while researching Shane on Monster X Radio. Every time Shane says research, take a drink. And you might not make it through the show. Probably, that's what I would think.
1 tequila, 2 tequila, 3 tequila, 4.
Oh boy, yeah. Oh my God. But yeah, that's pretty funny.
Guilty.
Hey man, it's when we're talking about research, yeah, like you said, we're probably not going to make it through the show if you choose to go down that path. But let's hop into a few more questions here. We've got my buddy Stefan who says, question for Shane from a fellow Scot. Well, I'm only 6.25%. Anyways, thoughts on the Bigfoot sighting from Washington State Department of Transportation on Route 20 back in January? Was it a hoax?
I believe that was a cardboard cutout up on. I believe I'm not mistaken.
I think it was seen in the same place like multiple times.
Yes,
in location rather.
And I believe someone went back and when there was no snow and it was still there. I believe, I could be mistaken. So yeah, hoax. I don't know if it's a hoax per se, but probably.
Right. Yeah, I think it looked like, because it was, if I recall correctly, I think Lauren or somebody, Lauren Coleman may have put a post about it where it was like photographed different times a day and it was in the same exact position. It hadn't moved. And it was this overlooking this pass in the mountains.
Yeah, maybe it's a body. Maybe someone should go back there. Maybe it's dead. Go collect the body.
Right.
I think it was hoax.
Yeah, so Critter Hunter says, hey all, tuned in late, gonna watch from the start, not live chat. Your channel is loved, throw my man. Thank you. From once again, the hopeful skeptic guy, question opinion of Bigfoot's evolutionary origin. Do you have any thoughts about what Bigfoot might be, or what is going on?
Yeah, I try not to. That's one of those things where it's beyond my expertise. I got things I'm good at and things I'm not good at, and that's one of them. I definitely think it's a sort of primate, a higher primate. We're primates. Definitely some sort of primate, way higher intelligence. Obviously, is it like an Australopithecine? Is it related to Gigantoblaxy? Gigantopithecus? I don't know. Because it does have a lot of primate characteristics. But then again, you look at the foot and it's more human-like. Yes, it may have a mid-tarsal break, but it's still human-like, yet primate-like. It's got hands. It walks bipedally, though it does, I believe, occasionally walk as a quadruped. I think that's why it stays hidden all the time. Everybody's out there flaring and looking for a 6 to 8 foot tall creature, and these things are probably down lower. I don't know what they are, but definitely flesh and blood. Something it walks like a duck, talks like a duck. It's a duck, and these things, eat, drink water. They raid trash cans, apparently, all that stuff. Very animal-like, very in some instances human-like. So I don't know where it falls in line. I don't think it's been obviously found in the fossil record. I think there could be a fossil record, maybe yet to be found in the United States or North America. But if they crossed the land bridge way back when, who knows? You may not find a fossil. So it's I mean, Gigantopithecus blacksea. I mean, there's just a few mandibles and teeth and no real body to it. So just rare. And I think Sasquatch is rare, really rare. Maybe by design. I don't know. Yeah,
that thing about the Gigantopithecus really always blows me away, that all we really have is, as you said, some teeth, parts of the jaw. I understand porcupines. There was a type of porcupine that ate them specifically in that part of China, but if I'm not mistaken, they were discovered in like a Chinese apothecary shop or something, which is even funnier. It would grind up into dragon dust and for bones and kind of stuff in Chinese medicine. But yeah, so that is like one of the largest apes ever. So I think that goes to show with people always ask that where are the bones question. I mean, that's like a perfect illustration of that may not be the be all end all answer. Just finding the bones. There may be another way to do it.
Yeah, and I another thing is there's up here in the Pacific Northwest all the way up through like Alaska. There's an ungodly amount of missing planes, and we're talking about stationary objects that have crashed and nobody's found them. They're just stationary objects. They're not moving anywhere. They've crash landed and not been found. And you're out there looking for bones or a Sasquatch, which is a moving needle in a haystack. It's a tall order. Yeah, go out there and look up the list of missing planes. Go find one, and if you do, that'd be amazing all by itself.
Yeah, that's I've heard that too about these planes. I think that terrifies people flying over the area if they're not a fan of air travel. You may just go down. And I remember seeing one of those Bigfoot horror movies where it was kind of that plot where the plane crashed and in the Cascades, and the Bigfoot hunted them, and they were obviously never found. So you can see how people extrapolate from that, what they want. But yeah, that's just like you said, stationary object. Now, my friend Eli Watson says, does Shane know Paul Graves?
Indeed, I do. Good friend of mine. Yeah, Paul, a fantastic researcher. He's been doing this a lot longer than I have, and he lives up here in Washington. Very knowledgeable. Yeah. He's also a great musician. and just a heck of a guy. And he's got some really good results over the years, especially with some trail camera stuff.
Oh, cool.
Fantastic guy. He's always
I know
innovative.
with the tracks, I think he had found in the snow were pretty interesting a few years ago.
Yeah. It made some about a year or two ago. Found some interesting and was on the news and stuff up here. And a guy that knows his stuff, a guy I respect and look up to.
Yeah, definitely. Seems like a solid researcher. And you guys got a lot of that, obviously, out in Washington, being the #1 state for Bigfoot sightings, based on the number of sightings.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Bigfoot Society, that's Jeremiah, friend of the show. Awesome program as well. Check out Bigfoot Society. I think he just interviewed Cliff Barrickman, and got just some great interviews going on. He asked, is there a plan to release video of the nest and the nest area?
Probably not anytime soon. What we do occasionally is and it's been tough this year, but when we do these symposiums and conferences, we'll share it there. We really don't post much on social media because we just don't want to argue about it. And it's just, you post something on social media, and we've done it in the past, and it turns into people tagging your name, arguing about stuff, and I mean, quite honestly, I tell a lot of people, you don't owe anybody anything.
Yeah.
You just don't. But don't get me wrong, I value opinions. I value but we do a lot of that in-house and outside the house without being on social media. There are a few things out there people can see. Down the road, maybe on our website, we might allow some video and pictures, more of that stuff. But if we're ever at a symposium or a conference, we shared loads of video and loads of pictures, because I know those people coming there to those conferences really appreciate,
of course,
data and stuff, and they're not coming there to destroy you or argue with you. There, and a lot of them have great insight, and so we share it there. They come to these conferences and stuff, and I'll share what we have, whether they like it or not, and go from there. So anything, I know in January we're tentatively supposed to be doing one in Southern Washington and Kelso.
Yeah.
Squatch Fest, and we'll probably share some more stuff there if it happens. We'll see how it goes. But
of course, that's the big question nowadays.
Yeah. So maybe down the road, we are doing a small production next year. I'm kind of excited about, with somebody that we've worked with in the past, and I'll leave it at that. A fantastic individual with a great company, and we'll probably share some more stuff there because I feel like that'll bring value to what we're doing and the right approach. And one more other thing. Honest to God, we get approached. We've turned down 3 TV shows recently, and I'm not going to name them or the productions or the channels and all that. But yeah, I mean, we get approached all the time based on the nest stuff, and we're so serious about the research. And we've been offered money for photos and for our time at full flight to LA, all that stuff. We almost 10 times out of 10 will turn them down because they want rights to stuff, and
of course,
we don't have creative control, and it really doesn't do anything. We would do more TV, but it had a really good platform to share, honest to God, really good work. And I think that goes for a lot of credible researchers out there that get asked to do these things, is that if it's it's not about the money. If the platform's there and you can share something and get to a broader audience and create interest, then that's exciting to me. Otherwise, it's not worth my time. I don't care to be on TV. I've done little tidbits here and there on TV, and many of the other group members in the Limp Project, Derek Randalls, Tom Baker, they've all done a lot of TV stuff. And they're kind of steering away from it because it just doesn't do much for the subject matter, and we're serious about it.
Oh yeah, totally. And that's something that I think comes with the TV territory. They want to exploit it and turn it into reality TV garbage, and it just doesn't end up right. So I commend you guys for doing that, and obviously working with select people that won't take that message or try and kind of almost get control of what you guys have discovered and twist that into their own profit or whatever you want to do with it. So I completely understand you. I've dealt with some TV people like that as well, and I can completely understand where you're coming from. So Jordan Warner, awesome filmmaker. Congrats on the recent awards for your latest film, Jordan. I understand it's been at some film festivals. He asked, good evening, question for Shane. If the discovery of Sasquatch became documented and confirmed, do you think independent research would be much easier or more shunned due to the academic interest? That's a very good question. That
is a great question. Never been asked that one before. I've not even seen that come across any of the podcasts I listen to, or it's never been asked on my podcast. I think it would be shunned. I really do. Academia, slowly but surely, are coming out of the woodwork. They're coming out of the closet. I mean, I work with Project Zoo Book, Amy Boo's creation, And we talked to a lot of individuals from all walks of academia, and they're still private, a lot of them.
Yeah.
But they're coming out and they're interested. They're curious. Now, those individuals would be interested in the work. But I think as a whole, if Sasquatch was proven and documented, it'd be like, no, we don't need your help. Stay out of the woods.
Right.
We'll let the big boys take over, sort of thing. The vast, that's just my opinion. I think we would, it'd make it harder. I think it would make it harder across the board, because not just with academia, but with law enforcement, BLM, all these agencies, because now they're like, okay, they exist. We got to close this area up, close, campgrounds. I mean, because you don't know anything about them. I mean, even though like groups like the Land Project are documenting stuff, doesn't mean scientists and academia are going to listen to us. I think a lot of solo individuals might, but as a whole, probably be shunned. And
I think so too. It just seems that if you were to establish something that's especially as widespread as it is across North America, with different parts of the country, if we're talking, the swamps of the south, the forests, the deciduous forests of the east, the rainforests of the west, I think there would be a lot of these groups and researchers that kind of find themselves in a position where they're sort of in that, like, well, your services are no longer needed here kind of thing, which I think is unfortunate, because those are the people that have been taking all the heat and all the flack. And I'm sure you guys have dealt with a fair share of that, but you stick to what you've got, and you've got some really incredible stuff. And I don't think anybody has the right to take that away from yourselves.
Yeah. I mean, if you're really serious about the subject matter, eventually you just don't care. You just don't care about the negativity and what, because you're very passionate. You know what you're dealing with without exactly knowing what you're dealing with. And so, friends like the late, great Dr. John Bindernagel, a guy that I learned so much from. And he wanted, as a wildlife biologist out of Vancouver Island, he wanted to make this subject matter less taboo. And I mentioned a lot on podcasts. A lot of people, everybody's listened to me on podcasts. I mentioned John Bindernagel so much because he was a pillar in the community and adamant about getting science to look at this, regardless of what direction it takes them. Just take a look, a serious look. People are seeing stuff. People are finding stuff. Things are happening out there. Take a look. God bless and rest his soul. I want to do him justice because he was an advocate for us, as laymen, as citizen scientists, as, just regular people. He was an advocate. And so, that's the sort of people that I care about. I don't care about those that are, negative all the time. I'm very much an optimist.
Yeah. Chris says Dr. B was a great guy. I have said it on the show before, and I'll say it again. His first book is one of my favorite Bigfoot books. I'm lucky enough to have a copy of it. It reads like a wildlife guide. I mean, I could read it next to my Audubon guides, and it's the same type of language, that scientific, very easy to understand sort of text. And obviously throughout his interviews and appearances on TV or documentaries, you can tell he was passionate about it. And it's just great that there were people like that interested in the subject and in the pursuit. Yeah,
absolutely. And if you look at, he's before he passed away, he started putting out YouTube videos, and you can find him on YouTube. Look up Dr. Bindernagel, just put like Dr. Bindernagel Bigfoot. He put out quite a few YouTube videos, rudimentary, but he wanted to share. He knew he was not going to be around much longer. And he wanted to share some stuff. Fantastic videos, and just what a great guy, what a character, and just a great guy. So yeah.
Yeah, Scottish Wildman, rest in peace, Bindernagel, as well as Carrick saying Bindernagel was a hero for me growing up, a real pioneer. Yeah, Carrick, like myself, as a younger guy that's gotten into this in recent years, and it's you're kind of standing on the the shoulders of these giants that really
absolutely
and they risk so much. I mean, if we're thinking just academia, you mentioned Grover Krantz or his niece, I believe, Laura, with the podcast. I mean, people like that just sort of stuck their neck out. Even Meldrum. I did want to mention, though, when we were talking about the academia part, one thing I noticed when I had Meldrum on, the first show I had back in April, has it really been since April, apparently? Really good question was asked about the future of science related to Bigfoot. And he said he kind of felt that there was a trend almost that the older guard, as they're sort of taking off, you have this younger group of people, especially he's noticed at his talks that he'll have people that come up that are grad students that are huge fans of Bigfoot. And he's like, that may be a way that people may start like academia may be looking at the subject a little more seriously. People may start as fans, but then they start looking at the actual evidence, and they may be more open-minded as opposed to completely sort of closed off and not wanting to risk any career moves for that sort of thing.
Yeah, I 110% agree with Dr. Meldrum, and I've seen that too. You know, with people like, you know, Grover Krantz and Dr. Bindernagel and Jeff Meldrum and John Meinzinski and a lot of these others, Renee DeHinden, a lot of these other guys, they were the old guard, and some are still not quite the old guard. I don't want to put Dr. Meldrum in that yet, because he's still very much a pioneer, still going strong, and very much an advocate, a guy, a friend of mine, and I love the guy to death, and very thankful to know him. But there is this new generation, because of people like all those individuals we just talked about, that kind of laid the groundwork, the foundation, and got interest now. You know, we got a couple individuals in the Olymp Project, a guy by the name of Isaac Kean, who's a academic, very intelligent, young guy, but so dang smart, way smarter than I. He's doing some work. I mean, when you think nothing else can be done with the Patterson-Gimlin film, he blew my mind with the presentation, in-house presentation he did to do with the neck, and I hope he does it publicly one day, because it's mind-blowing, his work. And he's worked with Bill Munns as well.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, talk about the old guard to the new guard.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of Isaac's background now with stuff like that. So, and then with Project Zoobook, you know, Amy Booth put together such a great group of individuals. We have a lot of academic individuals as a part of Project Zoobook, and a lot of laymen like myself. But we talk to people from all around the country that, you know, bug experts and water biologists. I mean, you're like, what do they got to do with Sasquatch? But they're interested. Science, and they're, you know, a lot of them are younger, some are older, but they're heavily interested in the topic. They don't necessarily want to be public right now, but they're slowly getting there. You know, we're working with zoologists from different zoos and stuff. So there is a huge interest. I see a lot of cool stuff happening down the road here. And it's all because of individuals like Dr. Jeff Meldrum, John Bindernagel, and all those other guys, you know, and of course, you know, a lot of people out there doing work right now, a lot of them are under the radar, you know, and trust me, you know, the OP is kind of, the Olymp Project is kind of out there, but there's a lot of amazing individuals and groups out there that are just under the radar, doing their own thing. They're doing really good stuff. And we collaborate with a lot of them because, you know, nobody owns this subject. And so, you know, the more stuff you can share and, you know, get around out there and bounce ideas off people, the better. So but academia it's definitely a positive thing. I'm looking forward to it.
Totally. And in a subject plagued with controversies and scandals and hoaxes, it's refreshing to have people like that. And I think I can't blame a lot of those folks that stay low key, because it's not easy at times when you are public with the subject to the general public. Obviously, you know, you've dealt with that. I mean, I'm sure the culture in Washington is a little bit more forgiving perhaps than other parts of the country, and maybe the other parts of the Pacific Northwest. But it just really is refreshing to see that. And as Chris puts here, it's refreshing to hear a critical researcher that isn't biased by his own beliefs, seeing Bigfoot nests and structures in every corner. Yeah, and that's, I think, important. Don't fall for that Bigfoot on the brain. Everything then becomes what you're looking for. And I think that happens a lot of times, unfortunately, because, you know, human nature, you want to find what you're looking for ultimately. Yeah,
I mean, we're all biased by nature. We all bias, you know. It's inevitable. But that's what I love about the Olymp Project, is that we hold each other accountable, and we don't jump to conclusions. You know, if something's really amazing, then we pursue it, you know. But, you know, most of the time this research is mundane. You don't come across much, you know. It's if it was that easy, this would have been a done game a long time ago. It just would have been that easy and done, but it's not. But it's a lot of fun doing it. And, you know, you got to keep that skeptical mind. You know, people hate that word skeptical or skeptoid or at all, but you have to, if you're really serious about the research and the subject matter, and you want to do it justice and do the people like we're talking about justice, you got to be skeptical. You got to do your due diligence and be the best you can. But definitely surround yourself with those sort of people. Don't dive in with somebody that's having an encounter daily or claims, you know, extraordinary claims requires extraordinary evidence. So.
Definitely. Yeah. You want to debunk your own stuff basically until you can absolutely exhaust the plausible possibilities, and kind of you're left scratching your head. But what I love what you mentioned too about the fact that you guys are working with, I mean, bug biologists, people from all sorts of field, you know, one, they're in the woods. So you'd expect they maybe have things that have maybe happened to them, but at the same time, going forward, if there's more evidence that comes to light, obviously this discovery would impact their careers and what they study as well, because one thing in the environment affects every other thing. As we talk about, oftentimes one of the criticisms of the Bigfoot field is, oh, you know, if there was this huge thing, why wouldn't you see such a ecological impact? you would expect that, but are we really looking for what an ecological impact would look like from this? So it would definitely evolve a lot of academia and a lot of trade. So I think that's just really just interesting to think about going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Because everybody's always, we got to talk to anthropologists and primatologists. And a lot of people don't think about the other sciences out there. You know, I mean, what would an entomologist, like a bug expert, have to do with it? Well, you know, are you collecting, mosquitoes for blood samples? What about ticks? Yeah, and that's something that's come up recently is ways to collect ticks. And you know, in an area that whether it's been a sighting or something, test the blood in those ticks.
That is really smart.
Yeah, and so those are things that, you know, I encourage other people out there. You know, there's a lot of thought going into a lot of different methods. This is an ongoing, breathing subject matter as far as the science is concerned. There's always new ideas, and like I said, stay tuned. I think whether it's the OP or the Bluff Creek Project or NOAC or any of these groups.
Yeah, Bluff Creek just put a comment in saying Wood Ape Conservatory.
Yeah,
they're fantastic. The NOAC.
Amazing group.
Yeah, definitely. And they're the same kind of way. They're very selective about who's in and who's be able to come in, and kind of media appearances especially. And I like that. It's good. You're not just jumping on the horse every time it's coming around. You know, you're being very selective about it.
Yeah, you got to be. I mean, but yeah, NOAC, great group as well. Matt Pruitt and Bob and Kathy Strain. And they're very, very innovative group and very diligent about what they do. And so a lot of respect for them as well. So yeah, you just gotta you gotta have that mind frame.
I don't know.
Did I lose you?
I think I accidentally hit back. Sorry, guys.
Oh, no worries. I probably scared people.
It's now the Shane show.
No.
But yeah, so I think we'll just take. There was one more question I want to get to, and then just another comment, and we'll just start wrapping it up. Somebody had asked about primitive tool use. Glenn H said, any evidence that they've mastered primitive tool use, anything like that?
I'm not personally seen or found anything or come across anything like that. You know, the closest, you know, I've had rocks thrown at me. Those rocks we found at the nest site that something had clear score marks. And I took those rocks eventually because I was so impressed by the score marks on them.
Wow.
You know, I think in that nature, you know, I haven't seen anything use, of spears or rocks being chiseled in the area. Nothing like that. I don't think they need to. I think they're just that big and that swift and that smart. You know, I mean, like rock, like tree knocks and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I think they utilize rocks most of the time, especially up here in the Pacific Northwest, because a lot of the limbs up here are so moist and wet. If you beat a tree once, it'll explode. But a rock, you can multi-use. So that is a tool to throw at a deer, to clack together, to communicate or scare off, to throw, to hit a tree. You can hit a tree with a large rock up here and it won't break, and it'll make the same sound, if not a better sound. It'll sound like a baseball bat on a tree sometimes. Rocks are where it's at. I think a lot of times what we call wood knocks. I think it's more of a rock knock.
Rock knocks, yeah.
But, you know, they probably use limbs as well. But rocks definitely are I think, a tool that they utilize without, you know, constructing it. It's just found. They can carry it. It's lightweight for them. They could chuck it. Multi-use tool. You know, it's like they're a army knife of the woods sort of thing.
Right. And yeah, like you said, that makes perfect sense for your area. It's a lot of moisture, maybe other parts of the country where there's drier areas that maybe wood may be the case. That's, something that's to be determined, I suppose, but a lot of great stories. Stefan says, great show. Thanks for taking my question. Thank you, Shane. Looking forward to see more of your content. It's past my bedtime. Good night. Good night, Stefan. It's just about 9 o'clock here, a little after 9 o'clock on the East Coast. Well, really thank you for coming on, man. It's been awesome talking and just gaining some insight about some amazing stuff you guys are doing.
Hey, Alex, I really appreciate it. Great show. You're a great host, and I thank your audience for the questions, some really good ones, and for listening. I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you guys, everyone in the questions and comments. Awesome as always. Hopefully, those of you that were playing the research drinking game are not like sloshed right now, but I don't know how that went.
Research.
The last 3 shots.
Three in a row, yeah.
So just really quickly, where should people look out for you and the Olympic Project? Where's the easiest place to find you guys?
Yeah, so our website, olympproject.com, is kind of in the works. Hopefully next year we get past a lot of this hub club. It'll be revamped and up and at 'em so that it's more updated. It's a little stagnant right now, I admit. Of course, Monster X Radio. Check out Monster X Radio. You can find us pretty much everywhere. I've been doing podcasting since about 2012.
Awesome.
And, you know, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram under Shane Corson and Twitter and all that stuff. And I do updates there periodically. And if anybody comes across anything of interest, especially up here in the Pacific Northwest, and you want to share it or talk about it, I'd love to hear about it. So, yeah, thanks again for having me on, Alex.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to have you on again at some point, maybe down the road when a little bit of an update and maybe some new stuff going on. Would love to have you back on.
Yeah, anytime.
Cool. Well, thanks again, guys. Just a reminder, going to have a video dropping on Thursday. Just some cool Bigfoot and crypto type museums that you guys might like, places I've been. Cliffs Museum, it won't be on the list. I haven't been there yet. I got to get there. But
go.
Yeah, definitely. Next week, we will have on Leon Thompson of Okanagan Bigfoot. So we're talking about Bigfoot in Washington, British Columbia. Mix up my regions in the Pacific Northwest. So that'll be exciting. And I hope to see you guys all next week and have a great rest of your week. And keep it squatchy, guys. All right, Shane, have a good night, man.
You too. Thank you. Good night.